Welcome to the Sales Titans podcast, the show where we break down the strategies and secrets of top performing sales professionals. I'm your host, Carlos Iborra, founder at Sales Titans Agency. Our guest today is Scott Purvis. If you have ever felt that pang of anxiety before hitting the dial button, or questioned your own resilience after a string of no's, Scott is the mindset mentor you need. He doesn't just talk about positive thinking, he architects mental frameworks that turn cold calling from a core into a championship sport. If you are not already following his content for its actionable psychology, you are missing out. Welcome, Scott. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Carlos. I appreciate the invitation.
Scott, how did you first get into sales and what was your initial internal reaction to cold calling?
So, yes, like everyone else in sales, I think, well, at least 99% of people in sales, I fell into sales. Can you believe that? And
100%.
I was really a kid. I was at university, and during the summer, I used to sell for a living, right? Just to make money for like 3 months in the summer. So I worked for a credit card insurance company. It was like, insure all your credit cards for £10 a month. That was the pitch. Well, there was a bit more to it, but that was the principle. And I would call anyone and everyone during dinner time in England
Wow.
just to get screamed at and shouted at, like, I don't want to buy anything. I'm having my tea with my family. Never call again. Bugger off, kind of thing. So yeah, it was again B2C, right? So I think B2C is a really good way to cut your teeth in sales. It's real people, real objections, real lots of resistance, and I loved it. I was 2021, and I really enjoyed it. I'm a little bit strange in that rejection and people pushing back and being horrible does not affect me in the slightest. I kind of take it with a big pinch of salt. I always have. It's weird. It's like inbuilt in me somehow. I never took it personally, but I think I'm quite lucky in that respect.
I think that that's the key, not taking it personally. It's just, when you are cold calling, you cannot manage the feelings of the counterpart. You cannot manage the
Exactly.
momentum they are living in. Maybe they have their friends or family in the hospital. They are in a bad moment, right?
Yep. You
I
never
think
know what's going on. Exactly.
exactly. And I think that having that as a first experience, if you overcome that moment, I mean, the sky is the limit, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can imagine your time calling these people at a bad timing, B2C, which is crazy.
B2C.
Can we go more in detail about those feelings when you started calling that people? And can you walk us through a specific early failure or a brutal stretch of rejection that fundamentally shaped the mindset that you teach today?
Yes, I've got a few ideas on that because you sent me some kind of pre work, but I no I so my first role, the one I've just described, that I found that pretty straightforward, right? It was selling stuff that was quite low value, and I found it exciting. The first time I've been able to make money as an adult, right? So I moved on. I'd say another early sales role, which was one of my first B2B sales roles, was selling to doctors and selling to surgeons and heads of medical practices and medical school, directors. That was a different kettle of fish altogether. I wasn't equipped. I didn't have the skill. I didn't have the confidence to speak to these people as an equal. So I really struggled. It was a very, very horrible period because I was surrounded by sellers who were very good. They were very slick, confident, self assured. They would have the right tone, the right voice. I didn't have any of that. So I was kind of drowning in my own insecurity. Yeah, quite a dark period, you might say, in reflection. It was, yeah, not easy. I was on the verge of quitting many, many times, but I thought if I quit, it means that I've pretty much become a coward, right? I've given up. So I just had to do something. So I started to listen to people close to me and I started to copy them. I mean, again, this was the days when we were all in the office, right? So you could have the osmosis effect, thinking, right, what is this top seller doing? What is he saying? How does he sound? How can I replicate that? Literally just model what he's doing, and perhaps I might just get a different result. And slowly but surely it started to change. I found, it's weird because I would feel so much tension in my body, in my chest, that my voice, whatever was coming out of my mouth, was not my voice. That was someone else. It was like a shadow of who I was, right? And it was really bizarre. But that's all the emotion I had. It's all the tension that was not allowing me to sound like my authentic self, right? I was kind of a shell of a person. So one thing that I found worked really well was just to stand up. Standing up in a physiological sense gives you more confidence. So by default, if you just do that, you will feel different. You'll feel a bit more confident. You'll feel like you have a bit more power in your voice. Because again, your power comes from your diaphragm, not from your chest. So you have to breathe properly into your diaphragm. And if you stand up, you elongate the diaphragm so that you can much more easily access your voice from there, which gives you a lot more variation. It gives you a bit more depth to your voice as well. This was kind of tying into what I was doing around my mid-20s because I started to go to acting school. I was doing method acting classes. I was doing all sorts of different stuff. And so it tied into that because I could now see how an actor accesses their power. And it's through breathing properly and it's through speaking through your diaphragm. So yeah, it was kind of like a perfect marriage in that sense because I was becoming more confident in terms of what I was doing at work, but I was also training to be an actor. So it was like it really accelerated me as a person and the way I would use my voice as leverage. Because that's all we have, right? When we're selling on the phone, all we have is our voice.
Exactly.
And you can look at various studies, whatever you look at, the voice, the words themselves are the smallest part of the communication. The much more influential part is your tonality, your delivery, and then you have body language. But if you're selling on the phone, you only have tone and the words. So you have to focus on the tone, particularly when you're cold calling. If you're saying the right things, but in the wrong tone of voice, you will most likely not do very well. Now, if you're saying the wrong things in the right tone of voice, you'll most likely get away with it. So the objective has to be to say the right things with the right tonality and you will go stratospheric with your performance.
I'm absolutely loving this insight, Scott. I think that for the people that will be listening to us, this is going to be a great advice, especially if they are starting out. I truly believe that posture affect yourself psychologically. In fact, if you take a kid, the kid is crying, and you ask the kid to look up, like most of us say, look at the birds when they are crying, they stop crying
Crying, yeah.
because that position, looking up, is against the depression position, which is looking down. So what you're saying makes lots of sense. Like standing up to make your calls will make your life easier, especially if you're starting. Also, I think it's very important to mention that I used to make an analogy. If you are related to the runner world, the marathon runners and so on, they are always talking about the wall, right? The wall used to be in the 15 to 20 kilometers, something like that, is where you feel that you cannot run anymore. But if you are able to pass that wall, then you can
Yes.
run as much as you want, right?
This is
So
this is the pain barrier, right? This is breaking through the pain barrier. Yes.
exactly,
Yeah. Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
So if we do the analogy again with the calling, you said it. You have been many times willing to leave the sales space, the calling space, because you still were not surpassing that moment, right?
Yes.
Once you
Yeah.
surpass that moment, in this case, it's everything is psychologically. again, you feel natural. You see that the outcome is not related to your abilities, skills, and you feel more confident. So your voice will
Yeah,
be your voice at the end,
right.
right?
Yeah,
Loving
yeah.
this.
The biggest issue a lot of sellers have is that they're not congruent. They're not connected to their voice because they have too many doubts and too many insecurities in their mind.
Awesome.
So this is something that, like you say, you need to break through that. How do you break through that? You practice, you just pick up the phone, you make calls, but you don't just make calls randomly. You have to become very self-aware. Deliberate practice, right? You have to do the right things and you have to drop the things that are not working. So having people around you does really help. If you can have someone at work who's a mentor, I think with remote working these days, it is a bit more tricky, but you have to somehow find someone who can help you because it's very difficult to be objective when it comes to yourself. Because you can be introspective and you can become self aware, but you can't always see what other people see. So things like, I mean, the tech we have these days is pretty amazing. So if you have any way of listening back to calls, then do it because you start to become more self aware when you hear yourself. Because we all know it. As soon as the first time I heard myself, I was like, God, do I really sound like that? I hate my voice, but I'm so used to it now. It doesn't bother me. It's fine. But I can listen back to calls now and I can think, okay, I can improve here, I can improve there, and this was a bit off, that was good. And constant refinement and reflection means that you will become just a little bit better every single day. So over the course of 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, I mean, the sky's the limit, right? If you're always getting better, then you have compounding returns on all of the work you're doing, which is deliberate practice.
Exactly. Something that I love from cold calling is that once you internalize it, you understand that you are all the time experimenting. Of course, you will never reach a point where you have 100% success on every outreach you are doing because not everything depends on you, right? But still, once you reach to that level, then you start doing what you just mentioned. I can listen. Is my opener the right one for this kind of key decision maker? Am I using the right words to catch their attention? So this is when you start polishing your process through experiments, right? We have been talking about the time while we are calling, for example, standing up. We have been talking about post calls, listening and thinking how we can improve those words. Let's go one step back now, Scott. I'm sure that now, each time that you have to start calling, you just sit down in your desk and you start picking up the phone and that's it. But in your beginnings, and for the people which is listening to us, which is getting started, would you recommend any kind of pre-ritual, maybe 60-second ritual before start the dialing session?
Yes, yeah, I would. So what I used to do, and you again, if you work in an office and you're surrounded by other people, you should always do some role play before you get on the phone, right? 5, 10 minutes with 2 or 3 colleagues. You just role play exactly what you're going to say. Your introduction, your problem statement, your first 30 seconds to a minute of a cold call. That should be so fluent. It should just roll off your tongue. You don't even have to think about it. And it's like you become a good actor, right? And particularly at the start of a cold call, you need to own your opener. You need to wear it like a second skin. Because as soon as you do that, you can start to play around with it. You can slow down a bit. You can emphasize words here. You can pause there. You can do all kinds of things, but you need to have it bedded down like a good actor. Like you don't have to think about the words. It's just there. So that's the first thing.
Hmm.
If you can't do role play with people, if you're working from home or if it's just not possible, I would just stand up in your office, in your bedroom, wherever you work, and just say your intro out loud for about, I'd say, do 3 or 4 run-throughs. Do it. Also, experiment with your voice. Do it really loud. Do it really quiet. Do it like you're telling a joke. Do it like you're in court as a barrister. Like, just play around with your voice, because the more you stretch yourself and experiment and try new things, when you come back to something which represents a normal conversation, your voice just has more elasticity. You've pushed yourself harder. So I'll give you an example. So when I was training to be an actor, I would have long Shakespearean monologues that I'd have to obviously learn and get them into my head so I could start to just speak them and get the emotion into the speech, right? I would go to the park and I would shout them, I would scream them, I would do all kinds of things that would stretch me and really just, it would engage my emotional side in the voice as well. So if I injected anger, frustration, excitement, whatever the case may be. So when it came to actually performing that, I had a really good centered voice, and I knew when to perhaps become a bit more excited and when perhaps to be a bit more frustrated or angry. And you get more variation in the voice. I would see your voice as like a composition. Like most sellers, they have this sort of flat line. It's like it could be monotone, it could be all the same. Start to see your voice like it's up, it's down, it stops here, it pauses, it comes down, it goes up. This is how you engage people. You need to have that richness of communication. The only way you can get there is by having a variance in your delivery.
And I think at that point, it's when you are confident enough to have human interactions and not robotic interactions, right? And at the end, something that I realized as well, especially in my openers, when I'm outreaching the key decision makers of the companies I'm approaching, is that it's not only the pitch, but the silences that I put in my pitch what make it works, right? Because I have seen tons of calls around, and it's like you start hello, the other person is being overwhelmed, right? So I have been experimenting with silences as well because I
Yes.
realized how important they are. They increased my odds of success on each cold call that I'm doing. Just for example, I say, "Hey Scott, I just saw your LinkedIn profile. My name is Carlos. I'm calling from XYZ. I know I'm calling out of the blue. Do you have 30 seconds to give you a bit more context about the call I'm doing?" So I try to put some kind of small silences there in order to make also them absorb what's happening, right?
Right.
This is
Yeah.
something I realized when I said, this is something I'm experimenting right now. When I start saying, "Hey Scott, I just saw your LinkedIn profile," boom, you're putting the personalization at the highest level, right? So they say, "I'm special," right? You're doing your job. You're checking
Yes.
what's going on, right? And it's
Yeah.
working very well. So I recommend you to test it as well.
Silence is a superpower, and I can't stress how important it is enough, because if you start to own silence and start to deliberately use silence, and I've been doing it for years, you will command a lot more presence in your conversations. Now, most sellers, I would argue the majority of sellers, they're scared of silence. They have to fill it. They feel insecure if there's a silence, like, am I losing this person? Is this person not interested? Why have they gone quiet? And as soon as you start to fill the silence, you probably start over explaining. You probably start to justify everything you're calling about, your very existence, right? As soon as you become extremely comfortable in silence, silence isn't silence. Silence has weight if it's used deliberately. It carries a lot more weight than words because you use it strategically and you learn how to use it and when to use it. So if I'm, say, delivering a cold call to a managing director and I'm calling about what I do, which is to train his sales team, I will call him and I'll say something like, so, John, just to give you the top line on this, so I do a huge amount of work with managing directors who are really stressed. That's where I go silent for maybe a second. I want that word stress to land because that's an emotional word and I need to communicate the emotion to him so he feels what I'm saying. So I'll say, who are really stressed because a lot of their sales guys, they're just discounting way too early. Stop on that, let that land, because I know that he probably has experienced this. And then I'll move on to the second problem. I'll say something like, and others that I work with, they're just overwhelmed when it comes to managing their sales team. They can't seem to get any visibility to understand where their sales process is falling down. So there's continual pauses because I want this guy to think, that is my life. Yeah, how does this guy know exactly what I'm going through? And it's amazing. People will start to lean in. And because you've framed the problems you solve in a language they understand in such an accurate way, they will just assume that you're the person who has the answers to their problems. That's how it works. You don't have to talk about yourself. You don't have to say anything about yourself.
100%. Couldn't agree more on that. And Scott, when you are having, let's say, a lot of calls, okay, this is kind of energy transfer, even if we have a lot of confidence in what we are doing after several rejections, you start being humble again, right? How do you manage your vocal and emotional state over a 2-hour block of calls to ensure that the call number 50 will sound as confident as the first call you did?
So, first of all, call number 50 by default should sound much more confident than call number one because call number one, you're starting to get into the zone, but it normally takes maybe 5 or 6 calls to get yourself in that zone of like being fluid, feeling good. So, call 50 should be very, very fluent, but also you might be tired. You might have had several conversations. So to keep your voice as alive and as active as possible and as engaged as possible, you need to train yourself. It's like a muscle, it is like going to the gym. If you don't have the necessary muscle, then you will become quite tired and it will come through your voice. If you ever feel like you're not in the right headspace, I would literally just get up, walk to your kitchen, make a coffee, make a tea, come back and start again, right? Take a few minutes out. I mean, again, I think it's been proven that our peak performance is normally in windows of about 45 minutes, maybe 1 hour tops. So I'd suggest 2 hours is too long to just continually knock out calls. So I would be inclined to do it intensely for 45 minutes, break off, take 5, come back, do another 45 minutes. So I would do it like that. But on that point, one of the issues that I see in sellers now is that they're so distracted in all of the tech they have, and they don't allow themselves to get into that deep state or that flow state, you might call it. If you don't get into a flow state when you're calling, you're never going to build momentum because you're in your screens, you're looking at this guy's LinkedIn, you're looking at this website, you're trying to do research. You don't need to do a lot of research. You just need to know the problems you solve for the people you're calling into, which should be common across the board. So if you don't have that momentum, you're going to really be stop, start, and it doesn't do anything for you. So you need to have that velocity and just doing one after the other and just building that rhythm to your voice so that it becomes so natural.
Loving that, Scott. Also, I will say that believing in what you are doing, believing in what you are offering, you just mentioned, you have to know which kind of pain they are struggling with. And if you are aware that you really can help with that, that will give you much confidence on those conversations. Scott, I loved everything about mindset we spoke today. I think that we will make just a few quick, punchy, mindset focused fast question, fast answer.
Go for it. Go for it. I love
Okay,
Q&A.
cool. Best book to level up in sales.
Best book. You can't teach a kid to ride a bike at a seminar.
That's a book?
Yeah,
I have to look
Google it.
for it.
That's a great book.
One song you listen to before a big dial session.
Um, I used to listen to the Libertines a lot when I was a young seller. So I would get very frustrated and very stressed. And I'd go for a walk, and I had my Walkman, like an old CD Walkman. This is a long time ago. I'm showing my age. And, and I would listen to the Libertines. The album was Up the Bracket. It was their first album, and that got me into the zone every single time. It's an amazing album. If you haven't listened to it, listen to it.
I will look
You'll
for
love it.
it. What would you say? Visualize the outcome or detach from the outcome?
What was the first one?
Visualize the outcome.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think you can have both. You can visualize successful outcomes, but you need to attach yourself to the process of achieving those outcomes. So your first priority has to be master the process, and the outcome that you visualize will take care of itself.
Last one. Is the fear of cold calling primarily a fear of rejection or a fear of sounding stupid?
Depends on the person, and it could be both. So again, if you have an insecurity that you don't know enough about a certain topic and you're going to come across as stupid, then you're going to fall into that bucket. And if you're insecure because you tie your identity up in what you sell, and if you get rejected, you take it personally and you don't objectify it as, okay, it's just the value proposition or the way I positioned my solution, then you're going to really struggle. So separate your identity from what you sell. It will save you a lot of grief and a lot of emotional heartache.
Loving
It's
it.
just a job, right? We all have roles in life. It's just what you sell is just one of your roles in life. Detach from it. Your identity is something separate to what you do day to day.
Awesome. Scott, thank you so much. I enjoyed a lot. In
Pleasure.
fact, I have a present for you. I know that this is the main reason you attended
Oh,
our
I'm here for the
podcast.
gifts. Yeah.
I will send to you our official helmet,
Oh, that's pretty.
so you
That
can
I do like. That's that's like the Spartan look, right?
exactly,
Yeah, love that.
exactly.
Good
I will
movie. 300. 300, right? That's the. You've just reminded me of that great film. Yeah.
absolutely. That's our philosophy, right? So thank you so much, Scott, for sharing your mental frameworks with us. This is the kind of foundation that turns good SDRs into unstoppable ones. So for our listeners, if you want to continue learning from the best in sales, like Scott, don't forget to follow us on YouTube and LinkedIn. And if you are building a team with this warrior mindset, you need the resources. So visit our website, salestitans.agency, to see how we can handle your outbound efforts. That's all for this week. Until next time, remember, sell or die. Thanks, Scott.
Good. Thank you, Carlos.
See you.
Right.